Hello, and welcome to Homeschool Moms Unfiltered. I'm your host, Meagan, and my amazing co-host is...
Hi, I'm Amanda.
Hello there. We are your source for messy, imperfect homeschool advice and community. Honest advice, practical advice rooted in data whenever applicable, but with enough real-life spin to make it feel like something that you can actually rock in your homeschool life.
Yeah, right. There's none of this. We all have the same 24 hours in the day BS stuff happening around here because the reality is we don't. I mean, yes, right. Like we do in the sense that there are, in fact, 24 hours in the day, and we aren't science deniers who pretend to exist on our own clock or something like that. But we are all dealing with our own crap. There's chronic illness, kids with special needs, working multiple jobs to keep the lights on, a parenting partner working unpredictable shifts. Maybe you're caring for aging parents, that whole sandwich generation thing, or just trying to function in a brain that doesn't always cooperate. Those 24 hours do not feel the same from situation to situation.
Exactly. I mean, some people have a lot more hours in their day that get eaten up by survival level logistics before they can get to the Pinterest parenting part of their life. I mean, some people never get to that point, and that's okay. So you can always rely on us for advice that will hopefully feel reasonable to absorb and implement if it feels meaningful and applicable to you.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Beyond real life advice, you can count on us to be a fully secular space where we ooze progressive values and ideology. The other day, I had a mini meltdown, one might say, might have been bigger than mini, over a post in one of the secular homeschool groups. It is so common to see, can I take the good and the beautiful and make it secular by skipping the Jesus? Or just how much religion is in XYZ? And I'm like, too much, friend. Too much. It's a secular group. Any religion, too much. This is my haven from the Christian nationalist hellscape that we're all stuck in right now. And if I see one more thing about Christian curriculum in a secular Facebook group, I am going to lose my shit. We don't do that here.
I don't think you're going to. I think you're going to continue to, unfortunately. It is so freaking common. Some of the posts that I've seen in the last week. Yeah. So anyway, we are all about teaching our kids about world religions, but from a secular worldview perspective. None of us are using the Bible to teach sex ed. And while that sounds absolutely ridiculous, seriously, there was a post just the other day asking for a Christian guide to sex ed. And the number of people who commented, the freaking Bible, was like, are you serious right now? Like, are you, I can't, I truly can't. I just can't. There are no words. I can't.
And yes, they are serious.
And that's it. They are like, I mean, there's so much I could say there. You should come to one of our Patreon meetings to hear my truly unfiltered thoughts on sex and Christianity. We won't go into that on the podcast because I know that sometimes people listen with their kids. So anyway, all right. So as Meagan said, we are progressive here. We are now watching ICE invade and terrorize Vermont and other states and communities. We're going to roll out another 150 offices throughout the United States because that's what we need. It brings indescribable rage and sadness. We've said it before and we will say it again. No human being is illegal. And we certainly won't be taking moral or legal advice from people who voted for the guy who brags about sexual assault and who has been freaking found guilty in a court of law. Okay. I think you're getting it. We're liberal. We're mad at the world right now. It's
hard not to be. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I saw a photo the other day. It was a man in Iran and he was on a motorized scooter, moped kind of thing. And he had a child on the back sitting behind him. And the child was fully tucked up under his coat. So all you could see was from the kid's thighs down to its feet. I don't even know what gender the child was because the parent or whoever that man was, that adult, was protecting him from all the toxic shit falling from the sky as a result of the bombings. And the caption said something to the effect, I don't remember the exact caption, but it was something to the effect of, no amount of propaganda will convince me that this man is not my brother. And I think it's the most meaningful piece of news or media that I've seen this week. It just hit me the hardest because it brought it down to such a small human level. And I just don't get, as a parent, especially, how you can look at another parent and not realize that they want the same thing for their child that you want for your child. But like you said, I could go on all day with the audience that we've cultivated over 150 plus episodes. I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir, as it were. So yeah, you're with us, but just know that you're not alone. If you've got the combination of indescribable rage and sadness, we're with you.
Yeah, no, that's it. We have this amazing audience who are loud about equality and human rights. So we are incredibly grateful for that. And we really encourage you, right, to remember that all of these listeners and community members here at Homeschool Moms Unfiltered mean that you are not alone. When it feels like every homeschool event means staring at red hats and listening to hypocrisy that literally defies logic, know that you're not alone. There are so many secular and progressive homeschoolers and parents and caregivers in general out there. And we just have to work to find that community and remember that we aren't alone, because that is a huge part of resistance.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, that is definitely a bomb to my battered being after over a decade of living through this madness. But for now, let's hang out for the next little bit. We have a book review for you today. We haven't done one of those in a hot minute. And who doesn't love getting a short digest of the highs and lows from a particular book without actually having to read it? If you didn't want to invest a bunch of time into this title, great, we'll fill you in. If you've been eyeing this book and unsure if you should bump it up to the top of your to-be-read list, hey, perhaps our review will give you a solid push one way or the other. So let's get ready to jump in.
Okay. Yeah. So today we will be reviewing our most recent book club selection. For anyone who doesn't know, our homeschool parent book club meets over on our Patreon every other Monday. It is generally a really balanced book club. So what do I mean by that? Well, sometimes there are those book clubs that are really just an excuse to get together and chat and drink with friends. And look, absolutely no judgment here, because I have enjoyed several of those myself. At any given time, I'm in at least one of them. That said, sometimes you do actually want to know what's in the book. So we, and I mean Meagan and I specifically, do actually read and discuss the book.
Yeah, true. We do, Amanda and I, but on the theme of balance, we don't judge anyone who shows up to book club if they haven't read the book. Hell, we've had people come to every single meeting and they don't even have the book. And it's all good. Seriously, zero judgment. Whatever works for you works for us. So the book we just finished is How to Raise Kids Who Aren't Assholes: Science-Based Strategies for Better Parenting from Tots to Teens by Melinda Wenner-Moyer. Amanda just held up her copy. If you're watching on video, I don't have a copy because I listened to the audiobook. But yeah, stay tuned for the Sparks Notes version of the book. Or if you're our age, you might be more of a Cliff's Notes era person. That's me. But either way, we will give you the scoop. Yeah. But first, we kick off all of our episodes with a weekly recap. It's part of our anti-influencer, everyone has the same 24 hours in a day vibe around here. Yeah, I mean, some weeks are great and some weeks are a hot mess. So what's up with you, Amanda?
So yeah, this past week, talk about a mixed bag. So from a homeschooling perspective, things are moving along pretty well. The last few episodes, maybe the last several at this point, I've talked about how we finally seem to be in a nice groove. We're right about on track with where I want us to be at this point in kind of our school year, with our oversight school and our general year-round schooling and our world schooling and all of that stuff. And things are just, they're just going pretty smoothly. For a couple of years now, one of my homeschool goals, which is a little random, but one of our homeschool goals was for my kiddo to learn how to snowboard. without using the insanely expensive camp that's really popular here where we live that a lot of local kids use. So we have been using a combination of credit card points and timeshare deals for snowboarding trips. And this past week, the kiddo finally made it down the slope multiple times, I might add, without a wipeout. And so that's a big thing for us. He can officially say that he is a snowboarder. And that's really great because beyond being able to just say that, this is a skill that has not come easily to him. A lot of things do come easily to him. And so I'm really proud of the fact that he stuck with it and he's feeling really proud of his progress. He finally achieved it. And that was a good thing. It actually kind of ties in with this book review because we did a whole thing on grit and I'm sure we'll touch on that later. For me personally, this past week, I also got to attend an online curriculum fair type thing, which I always enjoy. It's part work because for this whole thing, I do curriculum coaching, but then just personally, I love getting to see inside new to me curriculum and learn about new features or website options, resources in curriculum that I already love. And so while all of that was awesome and I appreciated all of those things, we did use another timeshare deal thing to spend a week in Tahoe. And it was a different part of Tahoe than we have ever been to before. It wasn't luxurious, which was fine. It was clean. It had a kitchen that helped us save money so we could make pasta and have cheap meals. And that was great. But holy shit, the racism in that part of Tahoe was it was bad. I remember towards the end of Trump's last presidency feeling really unsafe and apprehensive driving from Southern California to Missouri to see my extended family. And there were a few specific instances where I felt like I really needed to throw around my white privilege to protect the rest of my family. And I'm very thankful that generally speaking, we are incredibly fortunate to live in a state and a city where that is not a regular thing for us in our life. But this last week in Tahoe, it was ugly. Nobody needs to hear the things that were said because we don't need to pass on that kind of trauma and ugly and hate. But yeah, it was really unfortunate and shocking and definitely changed a bit of what was happening. And then on our way home, we drove past the Manzanar internment campsite. And look, it's a super important historic site. We stopped and spent a couple hours there. We watched the video. We did the tours. We did some stuff. I'll post some videos and pictures on our Homeschool Moms Unfiltered social media soon for anyone who's interested in seeing some of that through my eyes. But yeah, I'm glad it's still there. I'm glad it's open to visitors. It's so important. I'm not positive it'll stay there indefinitely with the administration we have going. And yeah. So anyway, a mixed bag. It's been a mixed bag of a week. So yeah.
Yeah, that's horrible about Tahoe. I mean, I shouldn't be surprised, but I still am somehow sometimes but I shouldn't be. I know that, but yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, what's going on with you guys? Things are calm, a little bit more calm in your world, at least. Yeah,
it is. Yeah. Aside from the first few minutes where you were talking, where there was this whole dog in the room, dog out of the room kerfuffle that went on. If anybody's watching on video and was like, what the hell is she doing? That dog is now in the room. So yeah. Okay. Okay then. Yeah. I mean, things are calm. I'm in a little bit of a not enough hours to put a dent in my to-do list phase right now. And that really stems from a couple of things. I'm lining up stuff for my kids for the next school year, which is obviously big. And we're unschoolers. We don't really function on school years in the typical sense, but my kids enjoy taking classes, whether it's online or through university programs or whatever. And those do operate on the calendar. So just because we're unschoolers and we learn every day doesn't mean that there isn't kind of this period of the year where there's camp registration and fall registration and all that kind of stuff happening. So I've been working on that. And then the other thing that's been keeping me really busy is Amanda and I mean, we have a ton of resources that are out there. If this is your first podcast episode, we have online courses, we have unit studies, we have the Patreon community, we have all this stuff, but we have even more stuff that we're working on that is all just in an effort that no matter how you like to consume information or what kind of support you feel you need from a homeschool perspective, if you're new or moving into a new phase of homeschooling, we have a resource for that thing. So we're getting ready to come out in the next I don't want to say, couple of months. I'm going to give myself a really wide berth there. But so yeah, just like we work on stuff back and forth. So it's like I do my part, goes to Amanda, she does her part. So I've been trying to really power through, and I have raging ADHD. So it's like that thing where like when I'm on a roll, I can't do anything but work on that thing because I have to seize the moment. So I would like some more hours in the day right now. But other than that, I'm okay. But I mentioned my kids. So my oldest is kind of vetting a bunch of Python courses for the fall, university level courses. And I thought I had found one that I really, really liked. And then my mom was talking to somebody who works in that field and then sent me more. And it was like, I was grateful for the more information thing. But then I was like, I was already decided on something. So, but then if I don't research it and it was a better option, so I got to research those. That's a later or tomorrow project. And then if you've been following the drama, I don't know if I've had it on podcast episodes, but for certain in Patreon, my daughter needed this tax document in order to finalize her registration at university for the fall. And listen, we made the choice to move to Portugal, and we're super glad that Portugal has taken us in and given us a safe space. And I know I'm very, very fortunate, and we're so happy to be here. We love it here. But it doesn't change the fact that you have to learn an entire new system for everything. I mean, banking is different. Health insurance is different. The university system is different. The government structure is different. Everything's different. And so you're trying to do these things where they're like, I need this form. And you're like, okay. So I think we ended our tally at 6 visits to government offices and 2 weeks. But I got the form. We sent it off yesterday. So that was exciting. With any luck, I'll get a confirmation tomorrow when they reopen that like everything is good. And I just have to pay her deposit then. And then her space is secure for the fall for university. So like hip, hip, hooray. That's exciting. I'm going to Barcelona this week. It's not as sexy and exciting as you might think. There's a medical specialist there that one of my kids needs to see. Medical care in Portugal is wonderful. And we have people who treat for this thing, but that's not what they do. And there's certain times when your kid has something going on or you have an issue where you want people who've written the clinical papers on that thing, not somebody who read those clinical papers a year ago and hasn't thought about it since because it's not a main focus of their practice. So we are going to the person who wrote the clinical papers. So it's only an hour by plane. And so we are going there this week for that. So I'm pretty excited about that. Yeah. And I got my nails done. That's my big life update. I haven't got my nails done in like 1,000,001 years, but I've been talking about the fact that I'm kind of having this resurgence of taking care of myself and trying to find some time for me and trying to come back to life after a pretty intense year plus of moving. Ugh. And my daughter gets her nails done all the time. She goes to this place right by the house and they always look so cute. And I'm like, I want to get my nails done. So I did. The other day I made an appointment and I just went and it was lovely. So I was pretty excited about that. I was like, this is my new thing. But anyway, yeah, let's talk about how to raise kids who aren't assholes, because I feel like that's a fairly universal goal that we can all get behind.
I hope so.
Hopefully.
Right? Yeah, that's it. At this point, I'm not positive that we all want kids who aren't assholes, but I would really like to think that at least anyone listening to this podcast is like, yes, I would prefer that my kid not grow up to be an asshole.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my gosh. And the book, I will get into it, but the book had a really wide range of things, topics, subtopics that they talked about things to address with your kids, cover with your kids, help your kids mature and develop into to prevent them from being assholes. So it had a pretty wide scope, which was good. So what are your general thoughts on the book, Amanda? High level review. Did it live up to your expectations?
Yeah. I think I really liked this book. I'm not positive there was really anything new in here for me personally, but I am also one of those people who has been reading parenting books since I was the nanny back in college. So I think generally speaking, if you're like, I'm going to do this parenting thing and I want to do a good job of it, but I've only got so much bandwidth to read a couple of books, I think this book is probably a really great place to start. Or if you are doing this parenting thing and your parents are open to doing things differently, but they need maybe a little bit of help seeing things in a different way, this might be a great book to be like, hey, I'm not going to suggest you read all of the parenting books I've read, but you might find this one useful. This one might open up some new lines of inquiry and thought. There were a few things in there that I was like, well, I mean, yeah, but, which, I mean, come on, for me, that's totally normal. But yeah, I don't recall anything that I was really like, yeah, no, what are you even saying? How the hell did you leap there? Yeah,
Hmm.
I mean, I generally thought it was a really good book, probably one of the better all-in-one parenting books that I have read. And
Hmm.
and I do see how it could be useful from a young age to like if you were just in the thick of things and could not read parenting books when your kids were little and now you've got kids that are heading into puberty or the tween or even teen years and you're like, I think I need to find some time to read something. This would still be a good book. I think it still covers some really important things. Yeah.
Hmm.
How about you? What are your high level initial thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I liked it, but we're opposite in the sense where sometimes you'll read a book and be like, no. And I like most books that we read for the most part, even if the book isn't really my cup of tea, which wasn't the case here, but if it is, I can still usually find a couple of nuggets to walk away from where I feel like I've been enriched in some way from the experience. And that's enough for me. I'm usually pretty happy with that. I like how balanced the advice was in the book. It wasn't all, never do this or your kids will be fucked for life. Some books we read are like that. And you're like, oh my God, I did that one time and I've completely screwed up now. And so it seemed pretty grounded in reality. Sometimes she
Yeah.
would offer advice like, here's what's ideal, but we all live in the real world. So let's talk about what's practical. And I liked that.
Yeah.
And then I listened to the audiobook. So just a quick note, the narration was good. It was easy to follow. I liked that at the end of each chapter, she did short recaps, but I thought the advice was solid without being all like, my life and kids are perfect. So, but yeah,
Yeah.
we can get into some specifics, which would be good, and see what we thought.
Yeah, definitely. So I am excited to rehash some of the topics and themes we discussed in our live meetings. Before we do that, though, just a quick note. If you are listening to this and thinking, man, day late, dollar short, hello, I would have loved to have been a part of this conversation. You can. I mean, obviously not for this book. We don't actually have the ability to time travel. But our next book club pick is How to Talk So Kids Will Listen and Listen So Kids Will Talk. And if you're like, that sounds familiar, it's been around a long time, but surprisingly, neither one of us have read it. So we're
Nope.
looking forward to reading it. The folks in our book club currently are excited about digging in and seeing what we can get. Again, that like crowdsourcing what we can get from it as well. We'll link more info about our book club in the show notes and add a coupon code for 90% off your first month, which means it'll be less than $1. So you can totally come check that out. We meet every other Monday, and usually we only read a couple of chapters between each meeting. So come join the conversation or don't join the conversation. Just come be a fly on the wall and listen during the conversation. Truly, like we said before, whatever works for you, it's fine. We just know how incredibly powerful community can be, especially right now. And we'd love to welcome you to ours. So, yeah, with that in mind, let's talk about what we have covered the last few months in our Patreon book club.
I will start us off by saying that my notes may be completely out of order from the sequence which they come up in the book. So I keep a notepad on my phone and I typically read while I'm walking the dog. And that's not just true for this book club. I lead book clubs on Outschool and stuff. And I pretty much always get in my reading time while I'm out walking the dog. So when something comes up and I'm like, oh, got to write that down, I break out my phone and I jot down whatever it was so that I have it for the meeting. Now, when I pull up that specific notepad, sometimes I scroll down to the bottom and think like, oh, sequentially, this is where this goes. Sometimes I put it at the top thinking, well, this way it'll be at the top when I go to start the conversation later. And there's absolutely no rhyme or reason to it. I usually have these like odd strings of asterisks separating different categories and chapters and whatever. So this will be a true ADHD rendering of the book where I go from chapter 1 to chapter 9 to chapter 4, but it's all good. We'll get there.
It is. The notes this week are a hot mess. So we'll see how this works. And then I have like 9 pages of notes because if you've ever listened to any of our book club review things, you know that's me. So there you go. That's what we've got. So yeah, this book, like Meagan started, right? It's divided up in all of these different sections. And the first chapter talks about raising kind, generous kids. Makes sense, right? The whole premise of the book is how to raise kids who aren't assholes. And it's one of those things, like, of course, and she talks about this and addresses the fact that, like, of course, we want our kids to have healthy boundaries and stand up for themselves. But that doesn't mean that they can't also be kind, and generous. And if you listen to us, you know that this just feels extremely timely in the world. I don't know if you're seeing them in your feed. There's a lot of local videos going around right now of bullying and just some really nasty hatred and that kind of stuff between kids and middle schoolers and high schoolers. I just feel like this is really timely. And she points out, right, that the research shows the importance of soft skills in long-term success. I'm not positive soft skills will be the antidote to our AI overlords, but I'll take it. I like the idea at least. And then for each chapter, she does this thing where she has several pages of kind of overview, whatever she's talking about. And then she gives specific strategies for addressing those kind of topics. So in this first chapter, strategy number 1 is talk about, validate, and help kids manage emotions. Again, I think we're all pretty aware of the fact that we need to be doing that. And for the most part, we're doing it, some days better than others. Number 2, create opportunities for your kids to help. Again, we all know that we need to do this. We also all know that it takes way more work and effort on our part. But this often comes up, this idea of like, it's not all or nothing. You know, like you create the opportunities, you do it when you can, it's okay. And that's one of the things that I like about all of the strategies, right? Because she's always giving examples or talking about like the ideal, the best practice, and then the reality, the practicality kind of thing. And then the third strategy in this section was make your expectations explicit and discuss them as a family. And this is another one of those things. We've talked about it often in the podcast. We talk about it in our online groups and things like that. It is so important because this is really where things can fall apart. As the grown up, it's so easy to assume our kids know what we expect and what we mean because we know what we expect and what we mean. But we have to really be aware that it's not that simple. We all know that assuming makes an ass out of you and me. And yeah, we just have to be better about that. And she goes on to also talk about like don't be afraid to explain to your kid why. And that's a change in parenting for a lot of people. A lot of our generation was not raised with parents who would take the time to explain it and give the understanding so that we could all move forward together. And she just talks about the importance of it when it comes to teaching them how to set healthy boundaries while also being generous, kind, and less selfish. Because in any situation, if you know the why, then it's easier to understand why you're making those decisions and to make good ones.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think expectations is such a huge disconnect oftentimes in parenting because we just assume that they're going to know how to do certain things that they've never done before because it feels natural or they've watched us do it. And then when they don't do it properly, there's friction, but this is their first time on the planet. They haven't done this stuff before and they didn't come with like a software download pack where they know how to do all these specific things. So yeah.
Yep.
I liked the part, I don't remember if it was in this exact section, but when you were talking about boundaries, it reminded me there was a section in there and I forget the exact wording, but it was basically like the ability to push back sometimes on your kids and say like, listen, I've done this, this, and this for you today. I don't have time to do that right now or something like that. And I've never really done that. I felt like I brought them into this world and it was my job to do this, this, and this for them kind of thing. But she wrote it in a way that didn't make it seem punitive or nasty. It made it seem like it might almost be something I might feel like I can do one day. Haven't done it yet.
Yeah.
But yeah, just that idea. It was interesting to me the way she took that and was like, you're allowed to say those things. And I was like, all right, I get that. I mean, it made sense from a logical perspective. I liked the way she spelled it out that for me, I was like, okay, the way you're saying that feels like something I might be able to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember that section. I also don't remember if it was in this chapter, but that idea, it was around boundaries and things like that, but kind of that idea of really teaching your kids, like, well, if you want people to do these things for you, you have to also kind of reciprocate. You can't be someone who just takes. And you have to model that in your parenting relationship with your kids, which I do think is it's hard. And what that looks like and how you do it without, because none of us want to guilt our kids and be like, well, I did this for you. But at the same time, I can see how it is important if you're going to be changing these dynamics and shifting these stereotypes and all of these ideas to be able to point out like, well, I did do this, this, and this, and we now need to get on the same page about what part you're going to share, what your effort is going to be in this or whatever that looks like. So yeah, she did well on that section. Wherever that section is, get the book, find it. Okay, so chapter 2 is titled How to Raise Kids Who Are Ambitious, Resilient, and Motivated. And for me, I think, especially as homeschoolers, we tend to struggle with this like whole concept. When do we push stuff that isn't fun or that our kids aren't good at? How does doing that align with a child-led education? And I mean, homeschool groups are full of discussions about this. Do I make them do this? Do I not make them do this? Do I let them lead the way? All of these kinds of things. This first strategy she mentions, encourage kids to try new, hard, fun things. This strategy actually is where we got our inspiration for the entire episode we did on grit. So if you haven't listened to that one, go back and listen to it. The second strategy is praise effort, not skills or smarts. And I think this is one of those things like at this point, we all know we're supposed to do this. But again, it's not always easy to do it in the moment. And I really do, again, appreciate the fact that she acknowledges that. Sometimes you praise the wrong thing, and that's okay. You haven't ruined your kids by praising their smarts or their skills. The third strategy was teach strategies. Strategies. Teach strategies to minimize procrastination. And then number 4 was don't rely too much on rewards. So again, solid, not necessarily earth shattering. And I'm going to put this out there. I like procrastination. Sometimes I love procrastination. I still haven't done my laundry from November, so
I can't even fathom it. I can't. I did. Oh my gosh, though. I did think of you the other day because I bought some more underwear because I know you just keep buying underwear to not do laundry. And
it's not
I
that
just
bad, but yeah.
I hadn't bought underwear in forever. And I just had some that over time I had to toss because the elastic would go or something. And I was getting to the point where it was like, oh, geez, I didn't even have a week's worth of underwear at this point, which I know for you, you probably have like a month's worth at least.
At least.
Yeah. And so the other day we went to the mall and I was like, I'm going to buy underwear, but it had been so long. And I had this one particular style and brand that I bought in the US and now we're here. And so I just bought one package of underwear because I was like, I need to test these for a good week and make sure that they spend more time covering my butt than going up my butt before I commit to more pairs of this underwear. But yeah, so I did think of you when it came to laundry because I can't make it through the week. I can now, but yeah. But one of my big takeaways from this chapter, when it talked about how to praise kids and what they might infer internally without even telling you that they've done so from the praise that you give, is that as a parent, you can do your best 100% of the time and still screw up because you're praising this way and they interpret it that way. So you're praising a different way and they're interpreting it this way. And it can be different by the kid. So and you don't even know it because she's talking about how they're internalizing it and how they're feeling it. And I just remember I can visualize exactly where I was walking when I was reading this. And I just had this moment of like, so any way you slice it, you're screwed. Like any way you slice it, you're going to mess this up and say the wrong thing because you don't know how they're internalizing some of what you're saying, even though you're trying your absolute best. So I did take that away. And then, I'm not a huge fan of rewards. And so I did like her thoughts on rewards. She didn't say no rewards. And I mean, we're not like a no rewards people, but we've never been a carrot and stick kind of bunch. And so I did like her thought process on some of those things as well.
Yeah. Yeah, no, same.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So that brings us to chapter 3, which is titled How to Raise Kids Who Don't Bully and Who Help Those Who Are Bullied. And I liked this one. I think for me, this is one of those ones where, I worry about it. And I think that's one of those things I worry about it on both sides, which I think is again, also one of those things we always tell parents when they come to a coaching session or something and they're like, I'm so worried I'm not doing enough. And it's like, well, the fact that you're here means that you are doing amazing and you're doing better than the average bear. And so I try to reassure myself the fact that I'm worried about it and constantly trying to stay vigilant and teach and all of that probably means I'm doing better than the average bear. But
exactly.
yeah.
Like the fact that you've shown up to listen to a podcast about how to raise kids who aren't assholes, you're doing good. Yeah, I liked it. What I thought was really interesting in this chapter were the statistics that she gave about bullying, about how many parents thought that their kids had bullied. I thought it was really interesting too, the stats that she gave about how bullying was occurring and kids didn't even realize it was occurring because sometimes they thought the other kid was laughing with them and they weren't. And she was talking about how we tend to put very clean categories around bullying. Like there's kids who are bullies and kids who get bullied. And she's like, that's not the case. She said the same kid could be bullied in the morning and then bully someone else in the afternoon. It's just this dynamic of figuring out human communication and stuff like that. There was a statistic about how many kids didn't realize that bullying was harmful and or hurtful. And I was like, huh? How have we gotten to this point? But we have. So here we are.
Yeah.
And I also liked the fact that she gave tips in this section about what kids could do if they saw bullying occurring, which I thought was good because that's a really sticky spot for kids. We were just talking about the fact that this is their first time on earth. This is their first time doing this thing. As adults, we sometimes have situations where you're like, I'm not sure how to handle this. I just had this with one of my kids where they were at an event and somebody brought something up that she didn't feel comfortable with. And she was like, yeah, but if I go back to this person, then it gives them more ammunition if I just let it go or if I just shut it down quickly. And I was like, do you want me to say something to the mom? And she was like, 100% not.
No.
Right? Like, but I wanted her to know that I was willing to do it if she wanted me to. I'd be willing to back her up or whatever. And we talked about through all these scenarios. And I brought it up a few days later, like, just so you know, if you need help, I'm perfectly willing to, and she was like, I got this. So it was interesting. And then she had a section in there about having kids write apology notes when they have been assholes. And we've definitely done that. We still do that. In fact, one of my kids just did that not that long ago, actually. And yeah, so it wasn't for bullying. It was for, I'll just put it. I mean, I have teens. I have older teens. And so there was alcohol that was consumed and there was a mess afterwards. And I was like, you need to apologize to the people who took care of you. They didn't show up to teen night hoping you'd throw up on them. So you're going to have to apologize. You're going to have to put it out there. So yeah, it is what it is. These things
I feel
happen.
like that's very Southern of you. We write thank you notes and we're one of the few in our circle that does like thank you notes after gift kind of things for a lot of people. But yeah, I feel like the apology note is very Southern. That actually flows perfectly into the next chapter and my comments for the next chapter. So chapter 4 was how to raise kids who won't lie or swear, or at least not when it matters. And so I think the kind of like the biggest takeaway is that it's really important to understand that learning to lie is actually a really important part of human development. Even starting at 2 or 3 years old, it's an important part of human development and cognitive skills and all of this. So just sit with that, please. If you're one of those, my children would never lie. Like, I hope they do because it's an important part of development. Anyway, I personally firmly believe that a huge part of why middle school is just so brutal for so many people is that kids are just finally starting to really talk to each other about things, like all of the things. They're not just playing next to each other or playing together, but they're having real conversations, but they have not yet mastered the art of the white lie or the gentle delivery. And it's no surprise that research shows kids lie more when they see adults lying. So it is so important that whatever you're modeling, if you're modeling gentle delivery, if you're explaining the difference between white lies and bigger lies, or explaining why they matter, or is it lies to cover something up or hide something, or is it lies to help someone's feelings? Like all of this matters. And this chapter talks about that. One of the things that really stood out for me in this chapter was strategy number 4, which was be open with your kids about your life. She talks about the fact that research shows the more we share with our kids, the more open they'll be with us. And I think it's that thing. Again, if you're here, you probably know we talk a lot about modeling and all of this kind of stuff, and it's important, but it's also hard. A lot of us don't want to bring our grown-up problems, our grown-up issues to our kids. We want to protect them from that. But she ends this chapter with this quote that says, they, meaning kids, learn that problems are things families share with one another and help each other resolve. And I just thought, it's not even really a reframing. It's just a reminder of the fact that, yeah, we need to show our kids that families have problems. I feel very similarly about conflict between parenting partners or things like that as well. If you never fight in front of your kids and you raise these kids, I dated one of those guys. Oh, my parents never fought. I'm like, no, your parents never fought, but they're divorced. I think you're like delusional, clearly delulu. Just because you never saw it or you never heard it doesn't mean that everything was good in paradise. You have to show kids the reality of what it's like, the ups, the downs, the good, the bads, and how you work through it and how you crowdsource working through it. And the fact that sometimes you don't. Sometimes you just need a couple days to sort through things and be left alone, well, and like, I'll come back to it. And yeah, just modeling all of those kind of healthy things. I like that in this chapter. All right. So then that brings us to chapter 5, which is how to raise kids who aren't sexist.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm going to say, honestly, I think this is one of the best chapters in the book for me. This is so important. And it feels like it gets missed by a lot of other parents doing their best. We try, but it's just complicated talking about stereotypes and how you address it and all of these things. And even when you're trying your best, you're still making mistakes because it's so culturally ingrained.
Mm-hmm.
So I just felt like this was a really solid chapter. She highlights the fact that one study found that preschoolers at school criticized non-gender conforming boys 5 to 6 times more frequently than their gender conforming peers. And that's preschoolers. We're talking 3-4-year-olds. The strategies that she lists in here, there's watch your language. Do you need to always gender everyone? Like, no, but again, it's so ingrained in our culture so often. She talks about encouraging cross-gender friendships. And I think a lot of us do that. We talked in our book club meeting about how hard it gets as they get older because there's just differences. And then there's so many other things play into it. And those cross-gender friendships get really challenging in the tween years, especially, it feels like. Another one is rid your home of stereotypes. It's easier said than done. I mean, obviously, we're 2 homeschooling moms, which means we're doing the vast majority of the carrying of the home. If that's not a massive sexist stereotype, I don't know what is. And so how do you balance those things and make sure that you're showing all of the things? It's hard.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last one is discuss gender discrimination. And I think that that's important when something that we can and should be doing from teeny tiny. There are great board books and things like that that help open up those discussions. But she talks about different ways to do that and address it.
Yeah, I liked that chapter. I thought it was really good. There were so many examples that she gave of subtle sexism that creeps in that were just, it was constant. And I talked last week about the fact that because we read that chapter, this moment that I had where even myself, I noticed reacting differently when one of my boys did something versus when my daughter did something, and how that stirred in me as far as what my responsibility is and stuff. It definitely got some things moving inside my brain where I was like, oh, hold on a second. I think that was just a gendered reaction based on what that made me feel. So it was interesting. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. I just feel really strongly about that.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So chapter 6, how to raise kids who have healthy self-esteem, but aren't narcissistic. And so I guess, given how much I like the last chapter, it fits that I kind of disliked this one. But I think more because I disliked what the research is saying. There's a quote in here that I pulled out. It says, you've probably heard that teens with low self-esteem are more likely than others to be depressed, to be anxious, to drink, to do drugs, and to commit crimes. This is all true. But what might come as a surprise is that the inverse of this statement is not also true. And the chapter just, essentially talks about the fact that self-esteem is important, but also it's not like making sure they have self-esteem fixes all of the things. And so you're like, oh, okay, fantastic. That's great.
It's another one of those you can't win either way kind of things. Like you have to hit this exact sweet spot in the center that is undefined and invisible. Good luck.
Yeah, exactly. She does go on to point out that obviously self-esteem is important, but the benefits of self-esteem might not be as world-changing as people think, though it does reduce the risks of many mental health problems. And again, she cites her resources on all of those statements. So if you're thinking about it or you've got questions or whatever, you can go do some extra reading on that. And the strategies she highlights: tell your kids you love them for who they are, not what they do. Praise your kids mindfully. And that's that idea. Be careful of inflated praise. It can actually cause lower self-esteem. And then let your kids fail and then reframe their failures. And that kind of plays back into that one about like grit and things like that. There's much to be said for not always being the best at something and encouraging your kids to not always be the best. Actually, a good thing in general.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So then that brings us to chapter 7, which is the last chapter in part 1. It's called How to Raise Kids Who Aren't Racist. Whew. I mean, you could read like 8 books on this. So obviously one chapter is not going to cover all of it, but this book is one of those things. It's a great like starting point for a lot of stuff. The strategies she says to look at: number 1, educate yourself and reflect on your privilege and biases. And we all need to be doing that, especially 2 white ladies who run a podcast about progressive homeschooling. Number 2, explicitly discuss race without shaming your kids. That's hard. These discussions, they are not easy to navigate and to figure out. She's got some great suggestions, and then there are loads of other books, and she talks with other authors and things like that. So good resources in there. Let your kids experience and enjoy diversity. I hope if you're listening to this podcast, you're on board with that, and that's a no-brainer. And then talk to kids about racism and show them how to fight it. And again, she's got some suggestions. These strategies are just a couple pages each in here, but she gives lots of other resources and links.
Yeah. I liked this chapter because I feel like a lot of us were raised in the we don't see color phase of society, at least in the United States. And of course, now we know better. And so hopefully we are doing better, but it doesn't make it easy. And so some of the things that popped into my head, like don't be judgmental with your kids when these things happen. And it can be challenging because, at least in my instance, I don't know if you've had this, sometimes when they say, quote unquote, the wrong thing, it is the wrong thing, but they don't realize that it's the wrong thing. They didn't do it with that intention. They do it in the place that you don't want them doing it. And so you have this moment of like, oh my God, shut up. But there was a section in the book where she talked about a lunch table at school and how all of the Black children were sitting together at this lunch table. And I will say, if you haven't read it, Amber O'Neill Johnston's book, A Place to Belong, made me understand that idea of being around people who get you on that level and who have similarities to you. She made me feel why that's important on a visceral level that no one has ever explained to me in that way before. Between her writing style and the way she shows up on the page as her authentic self, it's just completely amazing. The way she talked about her experiences being in spaces where it was Black only or white only, not because of the rule, but just because of who congregated in those areas, and the way that that impacts her and the way she interacts and the way she parents and all of that. It was very enlightening read. So after you read this book, because we would recommend this book, I would 100% recommend that book.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah. So anyway, we have more to say, but I think Amanda earlier mentioned that we do coaching sessions, which yes, we do, which you can book via the Calendly link in our show notes or on our website, homeschoolmomsunfiltered.com. But did you know that we also do multi-session packages of coaching? We both independently and together offer scheduled, personalized monthly support where we literally get together once a month or whatever cadence works for you and hold your hand and support you through your homeschooling endeavor. I do a 2-session transcript creation package for kids in high school, or if your kid is applying for some special program and they need a transcript, I've got you covered. And I can just help you figure out how to take all of your kids' amazing experiences and format it in a way that people outside the homeschooling world will also understand it and streamline it for you. Amanda does a 3-session customized curriculum plan that is totally tailored to you and your family, with a written plan, curriculum, backup ideas, and even pacing and implementation suggestions. So if you're like, where do I start? Start with Amanda. She will help you. So if you're trying to figure out what 3rd grade should look like, or you need help bringing all your learning into a transcript format, reach out. We've got you covered. All righty. We would love to help.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So that brings us to part 2 of the book, which is just called Strategies. Chapter 8 is called Shaping Behavior and Values. Basically, it's a primer on why you should be trying for authoritative parenting, and let's be real, a reminder to give yourself grace when you fail, because we all fail sometimes, right? That's one of the best things about this book. You mentioned it at the beginning of the episode, but this idea that, like, here's what you're aiming for, and the reality is going to look something like this, and that's okay. Strategies include respond to misbehavior with empathy, then guidance. If you use timeouts, use them right. That's an interesting thing. We've talked about it some before. I know we've definitely talked about it in the Patreon community, but worth giving a read and some thought on if you're not familiar with that. And then model healthy emotional behavior. So easier said than done, but at least she admits it.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. So then with chapter 9, you've got helping siblings get along. Obviously, as the one with an only child, I didn't have a whole lot to pull out of this chapter, but I did appreciate the fact that she has a pull-out box that says it's okay to just have one. A lot of people have opinions about people who have an only child, and those opinions are often even stronger when you choose to homeschool an only child. So if you're listening and you're in that camp and you're like, oh, yes, I hear you. I feel you. And the thing is, to me, no matter which side of the equation you're on, whether you've got lots of kids and you're like, how could someone have an only child? Or you have an only child and you're like, oh, I'm destroying my child's life because I only have one. Or you're like, I only have one and I'm super happy with it, but like everyone is on me because they're going to be this and they're going to be that and they're going to grow up like this. The research around only children, it's really good. Like, you want to have an only kid. And so wherever you fall on that spectrum, I'd really encourage you to go read a little bit of the actual research about what it means to be an only kid. And you'd probably benefit from it, no matter where you fall in that continuum of an only child thing.
And we did an episode about that a while ago. I think it's called like 1, 2, or a zoo. Basically like how to homeschool if you have an only, how to homeschool if you've got 12, how you might manage all of that. And I think part of the reason we did that was because there were so many posts that were like, I want to homeschool, but he's an only. And so I feel like I can't because and I'm like, I'm an only child. No, of course you can homeschool an only child. My best friend has an only who's a miracle baby. So there was never going to be a second child. And for the longest, it was like, well, she's an only, so she's going to be this, or she's an only, so I have to do that, or whatever. And I was like, finally, I said to her, I was like, we're best friends. And you're so worried your kid's going to be so screwed up because she's an only child. I'm like, I'm an only child. I'm okay. It's fine. I promise you, it's fine. So yeah, if you're worried about homeschooling and only, go find that episode. It's fine. It's going to be good.
Yep. Yeah. So in the chapter about helping siblings get along, the strategies, again, she's still using the strategies, even though now we're on strategies. Don't compare your kids. Easier said than done, I'm sure. I grew up with brothers. I can only imagine. Try for equality, but don't fret over it. This was an interesting one. We talked about this a lot in our actual book club. She talks about how the research shows most siblings are more concerned with fairness than equality. And in some ways, as a whole, we were kind of like, my kids care quite a bit about equal shares of brownie or equal this or equal that. And that's true, but she points to other things which make sense. Siblings usually understand that it's fair for the older kiddo to go to bed an hour or two later than the younger kiddo. And that's fairness. Whereas equality would be everyone goes to bed at 7 p.m. And they understand that that's not actually equality. They want fairness kind of thing. So interesting to think about and look at. She talks about don't force your kids to share on your timeline. That was another popular discussion, the idea of making sure that kids have things that really are theirs. And in some ways, we have kind of fallen back on this. We always have to be willing to share. But is that really a healthy thing? Does everyone have to share everything? And then the last one was be a mediator, not an arbitrator. And again, I have an only, so this is not great for me, but that was a very popular topic of discussion in the group as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, I have 3, but I don't have a ton to add here because generally they get along really well. I mean, they have their moments every once in a while where they're like rub each other the wrong way. But overall, my boys spend most of their time together. They are thick as thieves for the most part. And every once in a while, they'll piss each other off and one will storm off, and 5 minutes later, they're fine again. So I haven't had that. But I think part of it was because I raised them with this, like, I had you so you would have each other. And so I think I just like brainwashed them from a really young age that they needed to value one another in a way that maybe parents who aren't only children don't, because they grew up with a different sibling dynamic and it just seemed natural to them that, of course, you have siblings. And for me, that wasn't natural. So I was like, this is how this whole sibling thing is going to work. So I don't know. I might have done it a little bit differently just based upon my own personal experience, but that's how what we all do. That's what we know.
Yeah. And your kids are pretty similar too. So I think that probably helps. I look at my family, I have 2 brothers, and if shit really hit the fan, we would have each other's back in any scenario. But if we were just picking friends, like our interests are so wildly different, all 3 of us, that we don't have a lot in common besides the fact that we have the same parents, which is strange, but it is what it is. So yeah, there's lots of things that play into that.
Yeah.
Right. So anyway, chapter 10 is managing screens, games, and social media. She points out, this was a stat that really surprised me. In 2018, the research said teens self-reported that they spend 7.5 hours a day on screens, not including the time spent on screens at school or doing homework. And I was like, between school and doing homework, how do they even have 7.5 hours in the day?
That was my thought.
Yeah, exactly. And then it went on to say that kids 8 to 12 said they were averaging 4.5 hours a day on screens. Again, not including time in school or doing schoolwork and school related stuff. Yeah, I was just like, what? Like, how is that even?
Yeah.
Maybe on the weekend, but like, how do you even fit? How's there the time in the day in and day out for that? I don't know. But I did really like that she looks at the data and shows how imperfect it is. So our last book review was on the anxious generation, and he really sliced and diced the data in a way that worked to support what he was saying. She looks at it in a very different way. She presents it in a very different way. I liked her approach and the way that she was looking at really the same data for the most part. It's that idea. Yes, there is such a thing as too much screen time. A ton of screen time probably isn't great, but screen time in moderation is probably generally fine. But as with all generalizations, it'll be worse for some kids than others. And some kids will have a very low tolerance. And the data shows it's really hard to make a lot of sweeping generalizations.
Yeah.
That said, there is the idea of, and she does talk some about this, there's a movement towards holding off on giving phones, the wait till 8, a whole bunch of different ones. And again, talks about the fact that obviously life is complicated and there are times when it's appropriate to give a younger kiddo a phone, and that it's not going to destroy them forever. They won't be ruined because you had to make that choice for one reason or another.
I had a couple of thoughts from this section. One was she talked about the fact that the data isn't amazing around. She gave what data there was, but said there's some holes in the data. And I thought it was really interesting, the reasons that she gave for the holes. She talked about the fact that a truly valid study that followed kids over a certain period of time, et cetera, to really track this would cost an absolute fortune. So that was one drawback to getting really solid data on this topic. And then the other thing is, because you're talking about kids, and because we do know from the data that's there, like Amanda said, there is such a thing as too much screen time, that you would have to have one group within the study who you knew was getting too much screen time, which we knew was unhealthy for those children. And you can't do that to children in a study, ethically speaking. So I thought, okay, great. Like, we do have some data, but we don't really have super comprehensive data for all of those reasons, which I thought was interesting. She also talked about how, like our last book about the anxious generation, the author was like, kids who spend too much time on, they're going to be anxious, they're going to be this, they're going to be that, they're all these things. She flipped it on its head and was like, chicken or the egg? Are some of those kids who are already anxious or depressed or this or that escaping into their phone because they already were those things, because it's a lesser evil for them than the real world or friends in the real world? So I thought that was an interesting observation on her part. And then the wait till eighth thing I thought was interesting. I know my friends who have kids who are in public school give their kids phones quite young because they go to school and they're afraid of school shootings. And I'm like, you know that there's enough likelihood of a school shooting that your child needs to be able to call and say, I love you, before they get shot, but you're still sending them to that place. That always kind of blows my mind. I'm like, but you're still willing to just ship them off and be like, it'll be okay. This backpack has a bulletproof shield in it. Don't wear light up shoes. You'll be fine. That always blows my mind as a concept for giving a phone early, where I'm like, I'm knowingly sending you into danger, but at least we'll be able to talk while you're hunkering. I can't even. I know not everyone can homeschool, that it's not feasible for everyone. We've talked about the fact that homeschooling is a privilege, but the people in my world that are they could. They have plenty of other options.
Fair to say it's a logic chain that you cannot follow.
Yeah, there you go.
So in this chapter, she talks about strategies. We've mentioned them for the others, so I'll mention them here. There's don't monitor, mentor. I'm not very good at that. I'll be the first to admit. We've talked about that before in our regular podcast. Create a digital roadmap for your family. Teach your kids about privacy. Put down your own phone. And this one, she had a suggestion there that I thought was actually really good. She talks about announcing why you've picked up your phone to help break bad habits. This idea of, if you announce, I'm just going to quickly check my Facebook notifications for the third time in 5 minutes, strikes most of us as not great and helps kind of break that habit. Whereas saying, like, grandma just sent a text, so I'm going to check and see what's up, is this idea of modeling good screen time usage. And again, a lot of the things in this book, because a lot of things in good parenting is about modeling good boundaries, good behaviors, good time management. But I hadn't thought of doing that. And this section had some other questions, post some other things that I did actually use with my kiddo and brought around some really good conversations. So yeah, solid.
There was a super cool thing in that section where she was talking about privacy policies, and Amanda and I talked about it in book club. I never read. I scroll to the bottom. I hit accept. I'm like, okay, fine. Amanda actually reads them, or at least skims them. I do not. And so she was talking about privacy online when it comes to what you're putting out there and who has access to it. It was an example that I can't remember if it was her or somebody that she knows. But anyway, it was a teacher in a school who tells the students, hey, we just hired this consulting organization. They're going to come in. They're going to follow you around. They're going to note down when you go to the bathroom, all these things. A super, super invasive approach to monitoring their school day. And the kids were like, this is ridiculous. You can't do that. They started writing letters to the principal and protesting the whole situation. And she's like, yeah, but every time you post online, that's exactly what you're doing. That's exactly what you're putting out there. And I thought that was just such a really cool way of teaching that lesson.
Well, yeah, or even just walking around with your phone, because your phone is tracking that you went into the bathroom. Even if you didn't post while you were there, your phone knows that you went there. And so the people looking at that data know that that's where you were or how many times you went to that location. So yeah, that was a good activity that she had talked about.
Yeah.
That brings us to the last chapter. If you've hung in there with us, good on you. Chapter 11 is talking to kids about sex and pornography. And like, this is one of those, so important. It comes up so often in the groups, so many questions around it. I see the stat over and over about what a shocking percentage of kids will see their first online pornography by 8 years old. And then everyone, literally everyone I talk to, friend, parent, relative that I have mentioned it to is like, oh no, that will never happen. Like, no, of course at 8, that's too young. And it's like, okay, but yeah, it's the stat. And I know we don't want to think about it. I know we would prefer to pretend like it's not happening, but like it is there. And so, yeah, just this idea, like plan ahead and be ready. She's got books she recommends, other resources. I really liked this chapter in general. It talks about masculinity in crisis. It talks about how it's our responsibility to address that from a young age, both if you're raising boys or not. It's a much bigger picture. She talks about the need to reclaim female sexuality. And again, that's one of those things. Don't just talk about it with your girls. Like, all kids need to learn about these things for there to be the shifts that we need. The strategies she brings up talk about it all: body parts, boundaries, privacy, harassment, consent, and gender stereotype. For me, she makes this distinction of having kids tell you when something makes them feel confused. So it's that idea that sometimes someone touching them might feel good or just not bad. It might not hurt. It might not be bad. But if it makes their head feel confused, they should always tell a safe grown up. And I think that's a good rule of thumb. When your whole body isn't in agreement, something isn't right, and you should tell someone that you
Mm-hmm.
consider safe. That's a good rule for adults and kids alike. Might not be anything big, but you can always tell someone safe and figure it out together. In our book club, there was a quote that brought up some really good discussion. She said to tell your children, quote, every grown-up knows that it's not okay to touch a child's private parts. And if they say otherwise, they're lying. Yeah, just really like clear and straight, and there's no questions, and it's true and like good for little kids because it's very black and white. A lot of this stuff is
Mm-hmm.
not black and white. A lot of it is all of these things we're talking about. It's a spectrum, it's a continuum, it's complicated and all of this, but there are some things like that quote. It's very black and white, and you can 100% tell your kids that.
Yeah, there should be no confusion on this one particular thing. Yeah, there were some mind-blowing stats in this section where she talked about the way sex ed is taught in the public school system. And originally I'm reading through that and kind of thinking, okay, but our kids aren't in public school, so we can do a better job at this, right? I mean, they were talking about incorrect information being given out and also, I mean, it was mind-blowing, some of the examples that were in there. But then I was thinking, okay, fine. Our kids aren't in that environment, and so we can do a better job of that. But when they go out, if they go to university or they're adults who are in this dating pool, this is who they're mingling with, and that's the education that they've had. And if their home life is anything like my home life, no one supplemented the crappy information they got at school with anything else. And so that is the extent of their knowledge. So it was really, really interesting that our kids almost have to have even more awareness because other people aren't going to have that. And they need to be super aware and prepared to advocate for themselves. And it ties back to the whole conversation we had before about sexism. And then in this chapter, what Amanda was saying about like reclaiming female sexuality, because again, these statistics in the chapter about these college aged girls who did not consider their own needs at all in relationships or sexual partnerships. And as long as the guy was happy, because she was in this section talking about heterosexual relationships, as long as the guy was happy, she considered herself fulfilled or validated, and she'd done a good job. And then she gave some really solid examples around consent. She went way further than just no means no. We've hopefully all had that conversation, but she went so much deeper into like, just because somebody says yes to something this one time doesn't mean that it's okay the next time. Or just because they say yes now doesn't mean 5 minutes from now they don't have that. And just to spell it out. I mean, again, I've said it like 4 times now, like this is their first time doing all of this stuff. And we just intuitively expect them to know things sometimes that they don't have a reason to know until they've been taught these things. And so having those conversations becomes super duper important. So I loved the consent section. I thought it was great.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. So then the other strategies, answer questions honestly and briefly, and don't worry if you mess it up. That idea, like, don't go into too much detail. And if you mess it up, you can always come back and fix it later. You can always say, I don't have a great answer for that, but if you give me some time, let's revisit tomorrow. Books are a friend, right? I mean, you're a homeschooler. Hopefully you realize that books are a good friend. The third strategy with older kids, regularly discuss the rules of consent and accept that they can have loving relationships. And then number 4 was talk to your kids about sexting and pornography. And I think if you're on social media, you're aware of a lot of the pitfalls with that and concerns. She brought up some good points and some areas for going further and deeper. It's a whole big thing. And maybe we'll do a book club sometime, or a book that's specifically around those kinds of things for those of us with tweens and teens that are really
Yeah.
trying to figure out how we address those things. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, that would be good. I like it. So that basically wraps us up. This has been a little long, but there was a lot of meat in this book and it was a solid book. If we hated the book, it would have been much shorter because we would have been like, don't bother. It's fine. But yeah, I loved, there was this one section and I'm completely paraphrasing, but basically she shared an analogy that was kind of like parenting is like a bank. And some days, probably most days, you make deposits into the bank and you have long-term investments that you're working on. And then some days you don't have your best days and it's a withdrawal from the bank. But as long as you're maintaining a positive bank balance, you're doing a great job. And I thought that that was just really great advice because on rough days, it can be hard to remember and you're thinking, I've completely screwed this whole thing up. And so I thought that was pretty cool. So we've got your end of episode mantra for you. But before we do that, we would love to say, please, please, please give us a like and follow. It helps other secular progressive homeschoolers find us, which we always love. Check the show notes for oodles of resources. They're all there. And our end of episode mantra for this week is raising kids who aren't assholes takes effort, humility, occasionally a stiff drink, and book club friends who just get it. So come join us. We would love to welcome you. And in the meantime, happy homeschooling.
Yeah, have a great one.